And if it wasn't for mass media 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you always being, kind of my champion, I wouldn't have had this career. And it was a really nice little conversation. But I remember it was fully mass media. I mean, we used to do radio shows in a back room. I mean, I went to Wayzata to do a career day at the end of June, and I could not believe the equipment that they got in these places now. We turned a closet into a radio room in Mr. Weddle's room because I'm like, we got to start a radio station, and they're like, all right, do it. And I got myself like a tape recorder, and we turned it into a radio station. We used to do this stuff. They got green with green screens and stuff over at Wayzata. I mean, we used to do the stuff where we'd sit at his desk and pretend we were doing TV. I still remember who's the musician? They'll come to me. Forget it. Okay. But I mean, he came in. But then also, I used to announce all the basketball and football and baseball games at my high school after my freshman football year when I faked an injury. I've told you that story. And I realized that I was not. We were playing Pahokee High School, which is the alma mater of Anquan Bolden. He was a quarterback there. Yeah. And we're playing him, and I'm playing like tight end or something. And I look up, and there's like 6'8" guy with a beard, freshman football, growling at me. And not only did I fake the injury, but I was offside doing it. It was a false start. Because I was down before the quarterback said hi, holding my ankle. So that was when the coach realized that I had faked that injury.
But you were offside while faking an injury.
Yeah, I was false start. Yeah, I wasn't going to let him hurt me. I decided to go down early. I didn't play another snap that year. So anyway, then I decided that maybe it'd be good to get on the media side of the business. So I used to announce all the baseball and basketball and football games and stuff, and so part of that was I was like, to get to the teacher's pet question, Mr. Weddle arranged with Dr. Johnson, our principal, and I can't believe I'm remembering this name, Randy O'Leaf, the assistant principal, who's also a football coach there, to basically kind of like, I got a free pass to leave whenever I want to set stuff up, to set up pep rallies and things like that, do morning announcements. I mean, I was into media like right from when I was 14 years old. Another little scam, talk about teachers' pets, there was this thing, I don't know if it still exists, called DCT, Diversified Cooperative Training. And so my senior year, I was already working at the Sun Sentinel since I was 15. So my senior year, my job in DCT, so the DCT is you go to class for 4 hours to like 11:29, I can't believe I remember the time, and then you get out your final 3 hours and you go to your job. Well, the final 3 hours, I wasn't going to the job because I was working for the Sun Sentinel, so I just worked till midnight. This is at 16, 17, 18 years old at the Sun Sentinel. So at 18, this was my job. And then what happens is your 5th, 6th, and 7th hours, your sports editor essentially grades you. Okay, so I had 2 people at my work, my bosses, Fred Turner, who's sadly since passed away, who is the reason why I'm doing this job, and Dave Rousseau, and they would grade me, and I would get an A from them. Well, I got an A during 5th, 6th, and 7th hours, the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th quarter of high school. So my GPA just also skyrocketed.
Wow.
But I used to, again, leave class and go and set up these pep rallies, and I became buddies with all the coaches and all this stuff. And then it was really weird. Talk about a conflict of interest. I was covering high schools for the Sun Sentinel, and the high school I went to, Spanish River, was Class 6A. It was the biggest high school really in the state. We had 4,200 people in my class, and in my high school, my senior year, and my class was 1,200. And but I was covering the Spanish River for the Sun Sentinel, so I was also become like Bill Harvey was the guy named Bill Harvey was the baseball coach. Well, he used to coach Chipper Jones up in Jacksonville, so I had this in with Chipper Jones, and I'd write all these features on Chipper Jones, and people at the Sun Sentinel were like, how the hell are you writing features on Chipper Jones? I'm like, well, I know his high school baseball coach. So I mean, it was kind of cool, but I don't know how Luke pegged me. It kind of bothers me that he did. But absolutely, I know what I mean. If you think about it, kind of
you went from being defensive to going. Of course, I was a teacher's pet. I mean, all the examples.
Actually, I mean, if you think about it, part of that. I mean, just think about this. Sort of like the way that Luke just brought it up is that a lot of my job now is you got to be tight with GMs, coaches, scouts, whatever. So it kind of, maybe my tutelage back in high school was kind of that, and middle school was being kind of get buddies with the teachers. Maybe they'll give you the answers to the test. Maybe they'll hand you the SAT score. But so in a lot of ways, I guess that kind of is, because a lot of this job is, just calling other people. I mean, it's kind of, you're just hoping that you just learn stuff, and a lot of it is just relationship building.
Absolutely. Let's do some more Twitter questions. Let's first thank Tony Hoaglund, Hoaglund. Google him. Insurance, financial services, works out of Champlin. You can work with him anywhere you are. As I always say, Michael and I both work with Tony and get our insurance through Tony Hoaglund, Insurance and Financial Services Incorporated.
Hey, Minnesota sports fans. This is your local State Farm agent, Tony Hoaglund. I need you all to ask yourselves this question. If you're in an at-fault car accident and you are sued for $700,000, how much of that $700,000 will my current insurance company pay? If you are unsure or can't answer all $700,000, you need to give us a call. State Farm has been number one in car insurance since World War II and number one in homeowners insurance since 1964. For a no-obligation review of your current policies, call us at 763-421-4900 or check out our website at www.champlininsurance.com.
Luke, I'm still going to block you, though. I just want to let you
know. Let's see. Brian Judd asks, who should not be shopped at the deadline? That's a good question.
What do you mean, like in terms of players?
Yeah, what players should not be on the
if they're going to sell here, obviously Eric Fair, Eric Staal, those type of guys are most likely to go. They've been trying to trade Patterson. I will tell you that. Maybe somebody comes calling on Nate Prosser. I'm just thinking of last guys in the deals. There are tradable pieces on this team. I just don't know if you do it now. I just don't know if you can do it now. Do you try to make a hockey trade? Like, say you get permission with Ottawa in the next little while that a Mark Stone would sign here. Sorry, I shouldn't say it like that. Say you get call from Ottawa in the next little bit. All right, Stone is available. And say you get permission from Ottawa to talk to his agent about whether he would sign here long term. Do you try to make a hockey trade right now and look at a Granlund or a Zucker and send him to Ottawa for that type of deal? Mark Stone to me is the most intriguing piece. I just don't know how much he's going to want in free agency, but I will say he's. I hear through the grapevine that he's buddies with guys like Marcus Foligno, trains with them. So it wouldn't shock me if this is a type of hockey market that would intrigue him. But I got to say, I don't know Mark Stone at all. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But those are the only ways to me that there could be a big trade at the draft if you're kind of doing a quote buy sell type thing, a hockey trade. Otherwise, you're just selling off pieces and starting over, and I just don't know if that's something. And then the other thing is, if all of a sudden the Wild do a full rebuild, how do Parise and Suter handle that? Mm-hmm. And I'm not saying that to be a jerk, like people think they run the team, but think of this logically. They want to win a cup. If you do a full rebuild, do they even want to be here? Then is there a point where they say to you, okay, you know what, I'm willing to move if you can find the right deal, and then could you even? The one concern I always have about trading Parise and Suter is that the cap recapture comes back to the Wild when they retire. And are these guys for another team, when they've got these palatial estates here in Minnesota and Wisconsin or whatever, are these guys going to play for $1 million a year at the end of their careers? They're more likely to do that playing for the Wild than if they would somewhere else. And then if they retire early, the Wild are dinged beyond belief for a long time. If you don't know what I mean, Google Michael Russo and cap recapture, and you'll learn about it when I wrote for the Strib. And I'm sure Cap Friendly and those type of sites have tutorials on how badly the Wild get hurt on cap recapture if Parise and Suter retired prematurely.
From longtime listener Mike Swanger, if the Wild traded Staal, Granny, and or Zucker, which players would you like to see have their ice time increased exponentially? Anyone in Iowa worth bringing up to eat some of those minutes and have them make a difference?
Well, Greenway, Eriksson Ek, and Cunnin, definitely. In terms of Iowa, really not. The guys down there, by the way, to get to my Nate Prosser thing, I looked this up today. I was 5-0 with Nate Prosser in the lineup. Just saying. And this is an Iowa team that's lost everybody. Mm-hmm. They had their best player traded in Justin Kloos. They have Cunnin and Eriksson Ek up here. I mean, Tim Murray is doing a pretty fabulous job down there. But if you look at their roster, everybody that's doing well down there are guys, Kokkonen, obviously. Maybe we see him at some point. But if you look at their roster, I mean, they're not. There's no real high-end guys. I mean, I would love to see at some point Sam Anis get a shot just to see what he's about. In terms of, and I'll be interested if Rask and Hendricks are both out. Obviously, they have Rao. Oh, that's another one. I mean, they're winning with Rao up here too, who's also one of their best players. I mean, Tim Army. I don't even know how he's doing it, but it's the Nate Prosser effect. That's how he's doing it. But who do you call up? I mean, there's guys like Cal O'Reilly, Matt Reed, and blah, 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 blah. But there's no, kids down there that you just got to say. I mean, Sokolov's essentially been a fourth liner down there. So I don't know if there's anybody that you just want to bring them up. I mean, I could see them doing it down the stretch because remember, after the trade deadline, as long as you're cap compliant, you can have a maximum roster. So you can call guys up. You can only have a certain amount of call-ups. So actually, I shouldn't say that, but you could have a big roster. So.
From DJ Scandy, basically asking if you trade Staal, is there any chance of re-signing him in the offseason?
Yeah, I think so, but I hate to say it. Do you want to? I mean, They got to get bigger. They got to get faster and younger up the middle, and Eric has not been good. Mm-hmm. I mean, he's scored some big goals like in Vegas and Colorado, but man, I mean, he is not skating well right now. He just looks gassed to me.
From Brian Judd, should the Wild consider throwing Dubnyk's name out there at the deadline?
Yeah, I mean, the problem with that, though, is, again, you still need a goalie. And look, they have made it very clear that they don't want to rush Kokkonen and ruin this kid. I mean, just because he's had one decent year so far, his rookie year in Iowa, that to say that he's their goalie right now or the future, you could ruin the guy. So it's easy to say, yeah, trade Dubnyk. One, can you? But two, you better have a solution if you trade Dubnyk, because I'm sorry, Alex Stalock is not it. I mean, if Alex Stalock was it, we would have seen him start in Long Island. I mean, obviously he is not. He just isn't. I know that this bothers people, but he even considers himself, I think, for the most part, a backup. I mean, otherwise he wouldn't have taken a 3-year deal at the price that he did if he thought that he was a number one. So he took security. And last night was as disappointed as I've been with Dubnyk's play. Because I don't care the types of goals that are scored. I get their deflections and crazy bounces. You got to win them that game. Doobie said after the game, I'll just give you a little scenario. In the post-game locker room, Doobie said a quote that he has said 1,000 times. He goes, "This is not us." I'm totally paraphrasing. This is not exactly what he said, but this is the gist of it. This is not us. We played this great game, and normally we do this and this and this and this. And I said, and finally, everybody walked away, and I said to Doobie, and this is where I got the last quote of the story in The Athletic. I said to Doobie, I said, when do you think that maybe this isn't you anymore? In other words, I said to him in a real convoluted way, I said to him, I'm like, you've been saying all year long that we usually lock it down and we usually this and well, maybe you've passed your window here. Maybe this is who you guys are, a team that can't start off strong and a team that can't lock it down. And he basically said that he kind of agreed, even though he was disagreeing with me, he kind of agreed to me. His quote was, normally, in the third period, if we took a 4-3 lead, I knew that we could cruise to the end. I knew that it was just going to be locked down, like game over, done is his quote. And so we just have to get back to that. But my point, again, is maybe that's not the team. And frankly, back then when you were cruising to the end, you were making all the saves. And now this is every single time in the third period. I mean, it's been a dozen or 15 times this year that they have had a lead or tied in the third period. I'm not saying going into the third period. They've had I got to figure it out. It's going to fry my brain to go through all the game sheets. But it's been Bruce said it after the game. It's been a dozen or 15 times this year, easily, that they've been tied or had the lead in the third period that didn't get a win. And so a lot of that's on him and the goaltending. You look at the analytics. They put it out today. One of the analytics sites, I think it was Charting Hockey, if I remember. Dubnyk and Stalock are very glaringly on the bottom of everybody in this league in goals per expectation. So.
A couple more minutes. Thanks for all the Twitter questions. As always, we're not going to get to all of them, but we do appreciate you sending them in. From Be The Match, This is an interesting question. How do road trips work for the Wild? Does each player get his own room? Do they share? Do only certain vets get their own rooms if they share? Do they get to pick their roommate, or the team determine that? And do they room the same guys every trip?
Yeah, they all get their own room, unless technically if you're on an entry-level deal, I think you have to share, but the Wild, I think, give everybody their own room. This changed in the last CBA. One of the gets by the players in the lockout, and it was a huge cost for teams, is that no longer roommates. It used to be that guys with 600 games of service or more would all of a sudden lose their roommate. And one of the funny stories I wrote about the Wild, you can Google this too, or go to the Star Tribune search field. Search